All right. Hello, one participant. I'm Rome Hamner from the TCA Board of Directors, and I am leading the informational session on the TCA Grant Program. And I am recording this, so that's why I'm going to go ahead and just go through, and we'll do Q&A at the end. Oh, we got a second person. Great. Oops. Hang on. I got to be on the actual. There we go. All right, so outline for this session, I'm going to hit some high-level highlights of the TCA Grant Program. I'll go through the guidelines and mention a couple of resources that might be helpful if you're thinking of applying. I'll talk through a few examples of projects that have been funded in the past, and then we'll do a Q&A. And yes, if you could go ahead and mute yourself, that would be great. I had asked people, I was thinking I'd ask people to submit questions using the chat function in Zoom, but since there are only 2 participants, I feel like you can just ask questions real time. The next slide is how to use the Zoom chat function. If you wind up needing to use it, there should be a chat icon, looks like a little speech bubble. You just click on that and then you can type in your question. So when we get to the Q&A, if more people have joined us, I'll ask you to stay muted and use the chat function, but if it's still just the 3 of us, then we'll just unmute and you can ask your questions. All right, so jumping right into the highlights of this year's TCA grant round. Grants are due October 16th, so the round is open for just about a month at midnight. I mean, they're due a second before midnight, but think of it as midnight on October 16th. The panel, which is made up of TCA board members, will meet in November to review and score, and then awards will be announced before the end of the calendar year, of this calendar year. The projects that are being funded should be taking place within calendar year 2020. We have a total of $15,000 to give this year, which is the largest grant round we've had to date. And new this year, you have to ask for at least $2,000. There hasn't been a minimum request in the past, but this year minimum ask is $2,000. So that's an important change from previous years. Similar to previous years, we do require a 1-to-1 match. So if you're asking for $2,000, you have to match $2,000. If you're asking for $5,000, you have to match $5,000. But all of the match can be in kind. And if you're not familiar with in-kind match and how that works, there's an FAQ section on the TCA Grants webpage. If you scroll down, it's at the bottom. And in there, it talks a little bit about what in-kind match is, if that's not a term you're familiar with. This is a high-level overview of the guidelines. If you want to see the guidelines in detail and also the link to the application form, they're all at that website that's linked at the bottom of this slide. We are looking for projects that align with TCA's mission, which is to empower the people and advance the art of taiko. So that's the first bar you want to clear in terms of, is this a mission match? The next sort of bar to think about in terms of, is this project a fit for this opportunity, is, does the project align with TCA's core values and guiding principles? And if it does, it's probably going to be scored higher. So the TCA core values and guiding principles are available on the TCA website. There's a link right there, but you can also just Google and you will find them. And so to have your proposal be as strong as it possibly can, you want to talk about how it matches the mission, but also how it matches those core values and guiding principles, because both things are important. Scoring is 3 main areas that panelists look at when determining a score. First, alignment with TCA mission, and also those core values and guiding principles. The feasibility of the project, if the panelist thinks that you can do the things you're saying you're going to do, and how significant this is. With significance, they're very much talking about, well, I should qualify this with panelists rotate regularly. So the stuff I'm saying now, I'm talking about panelists who have scored in the past, but I'm talking about trends that have been consistent in the panelist scoring. So there's a good reason to suspect the scoring would be similar this time around. So in the past, significance has been more about this project's significance to and impact on the larger taiko community as opposed to a single taiko group. Another helpful resource linked there, but it's the grant page. If you scroll down to the section that lays out the scoring and what percentage each element makes up of your score, underneath each element, there are some questions listed. Answer those questions for your proposal to be as strong as it possibly can, because those are the things that panelists have really been looking at in the past to put scores together in these areas. Like I mentioned before, you have to have a one-to-one match. It can all be in kind. Applicants have to be a US-based 501c3 or have a fiscal sponsor that is a US-based 501c3. That has to do with the way TCA is structured. We can only make grants to other 501c3s. You do not have to be a member of TCA to apply for this. And if you're a board member, employee, or a contractor of TCA, you're not eligible to apply. So I'm moving on now to some examples of projects that have been funded in the past. These aren't the only kinds of things that have been funded, but just to help get ideas flowing or to give you a framework for your idea. So the first one here, this is a link. This was Simpson Taiko in Colorado, and they came up with a process of building 2 drums from 1 barrel. And they cut off the top and the bottom and put those together to make a hiradaiko, as well as a larger drum, and you can see in the picture here. And so the project they were funded for was putting together a detailed pictorial guide on how to do this. So it was a resource that became available to the full taiko community for something that's extremely useful for people who want to make as many drums as they can. So that's one example. Another example of a new resource development type of project is this website that Karen Young led, which is the Taiko and Community website. So if you're not familiar with this website, it's a really great resource. It explores and links to projects that people are doing that are about taiko building, using taiko to build community. And she's got all kinds of links to different projects, discussions of how people are doing this. It's a really great resource if you're interested in this kind of work. So again, it's an example of a resource that's valuable to the taiko community that felt like a good match for the TCA mission. So that's one type of project that's been funded in the past, a project to develop a new resource. Gatherings have also been funded in the past. You can see here, this was the first Buddhist Taiko gathering held a couple of years ago in the Bay Area. And then the other pictures are the Intercollegiate Taiko Invitational and the East Coast Taiko Conference. So gatherings that bring together sort of sub-communities within the taiko community, or a geographically isolated taiko area that brings them together to strengthen their community within our larger community, if that makes sense, have been a good fit in the past and have been funded, most of them at their full ask. So that's just a couple examples of types of projects that have been funded in the past. And that's as much as I'm going to say. If you want more detail, this was a high-level overview of, like I said, that webpage that's linked on the second or third slide. So everything is laid out there in a lot of detail. I wanted to use the bulk of this time to answer any questions that people may have had. So if you have questions, if you want to go ahead and unmute and ask them now is the time. Maybe nobody has questions. Okay, so if there aren't any questions, then we're pretty much done. If you think of a question later on, email me. So I'm just rome@taiko-community-alliance.org, and I'll get to your email and answer your question as soon as I can. But unless people have specific questions, I don't have any more general information to present.
Okay, I'll ask a question then, Rome.
Sure.
First, thanks for holding this webinar.
Sure.
I had been keeping the TCA mini grants, or now grants, on my list for a while now, but trying to figure out what you were talking about, alignment with the mission and significance, I guess, those areas. Because we don't have yet a project that's obviously like, a community resource or a gathering of an open gathering that would necessarily be obviously, like, oh, this is a taiko conference in this region or whatever. But the things I've been thinking about include next year is our 10th anniversary.
Mhm.
And so we hold a recital and concert every year. And this year, we're wanting to bring in our mentors from Japan and also local, a regional taiko group, Hoetsu Taiko from Chicago. And so it's more of a, I guess, celebration at this point that we're envisioning. But underneath that has always been one of our missions to strengthen the network in the Great Lakes Midwest region. So I don't know. I just wanted to get your thoughts on how that ties in with, some of the things you've mentioned in terms of why the grants might be appropriate or not appropriate.
Sure. Yeah, that's a great question because anniversary concerts are complicated because we have gotten proposals for anniversary concerts that haven't been funded, and we've gotten proposals for a couple that have been funded. And like I said, panelists change every year, so I'm just talking about broad trends over the last few years.
Yeah, sure.
The main difference has been for the ones that have gotten funded. They made a very strong case for how their concert was going to strengthen their region. It was a region that is isolated from the main taiko centers on the coasts, and they made a really good case as to how through this concert they were helping their local region connect and build its own community. Another anniversary concert that got funded, they put together a slideshow presentation that they ran before, I think it was actually a video that they ran before the show that was all about the history of their group. And their group was one of the first established here in the US. And so the collecting and documentation of that history was very valuable to the larger community because that hadn't been put together in one place before. So if you can think about the ways in which your concert, I mean, if it does do something like that, like organically, you don't want to layer stuff onto your concert that isn't natural and organic to what you do anyway. But if anything like that maybe fits, or if that gets your, creative juices flowing, and you think of another thing that might be happening in your concert that sort of speaks to that larger community-wide, or at least regional community-wide impact, then potentially there might be a fit there.
Okay, thank you for those thoughts.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you for doing this, by the way.
Sure.
I am interested in in-kind funding. I have not looked at the information that is available, and so perhaps you just want to say to me, just look at that. But generally, can you explain a little bit, if you will, please, about in-kind funding?
Sure. Yeah, so in-kind is kind of a beautiful thing in the nonprofit world, in my opinion. So I'll just say the example that's on the website right now to see if that helps. So let's imagine that the project you're writing for is some kind of gathering that you're going to bring together, let's say the Midwest Great Lakes Taiko community in a mini conference. And let's say that the venue that you're going to use normally would charge you $500 for a day-long rental. Let's say you're doing a one-day conference. Normally they would charge $500, but they don't charge you the $500 either, for whatever reason, they don't charge you the $500. So that becomes an in-kind contribution towards your project because you don't have to lay that money out because basically you got the resource for free. So that's a $500 in-kind match. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes, yes. Very good. Thank you. This would not include financial contributions from, well, financial contributions. That is not an in-kind funding.
It's not, but it's a cash match, and you can absolutely use individual contributions as your match. Your match can be in-kind or cash or a combination of the two.
I see.
Yeah, if you've got individuals contributing to your project, definitely list that as cash match.
Okay, great. All right, thank you very much.
All right, any other questions?
I'm good.
Okay, all right, well, like I said, there's my email up there on the screen, and it's also on the TCA grants page, if you don't take it down right now. If you think of further questions later, shoot me an email. Otherwise, proposals are due at midnight on October 16th.
Great, thanks.
All right, cool. Thank you both. Have a great Sunday.
Thanks, you too. Bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye.